Alibaba shares surging almost 15% on this potential value creation. Here to discuss is Scott Kessler, global sector lead for tech, media, and telecom with Third Bridge. Scott, it's great to see you. And is this justification warranted?
Well, I think it's big news for sure, and I think people are perceiving it as such. Look, Alibaba has been essentially a next-generation digital conglomerate for some time, and I think a lot of conglomerates over time realize that perhaps they can actualize more value if, in fact, they separate out those businesses and provide them with independence.
I heard David Faber this morning suggest, well, what if the purpose of 6 different units is to make layoffs easier, streamline, cost cuts? That wouldn't be quite as bullish, or maybe it would be given the year of efficiency that Wall Street's been so excited about here in the U.S.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I'm not so sure that that's the primary rationale here. I think, as Alibaba stated, they're looking to unlock value. And so one of the ways to do that is to enable the investing public to have a better sense of what these different businesses consist of. And to be honest, I think there is kind of a realization that there hasn't been much in the way of synergies across some of these businesses. If you think about small business e-commerce in China versus Alibaba Pictures, I don't know that there's much of a connection in terms of what those and some of the other businesses are doing.
Who's driving this, Scott, and what, if any, benefit redounds to the government of China through this breakup? How do you think they feel about it?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because I think over the last couple of years, if you consider big tech in China, it's been hard sledding for sure. I think the government has been very focused on kind of reining in the power of these big tech companies. It used to be in China, big tech was really Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent, the bat companies, so to speak. And I think it's fair to say that there seems to have been a thawing of that kind of Cold War that's been taking place between big tech in China and the government. I think this is a good indication of that, because I don't know that Alibaba would have proceeded with this plan without at least the tacit endorsement of government interests.
So I also, and I love that point, Scott, about what might be going on here. It does seem odd because we already know that the Chinese government has shown an appetite for going after these big tech names, but we're also in the middle of kind of an arms race against the U.S. And do they ever, feel the need to amass more power and kind of direct it more clearly? I'm just curious about that dynamic.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people have viewed kind of where Alibaba is based and the involvement actually or potentially of the Chinese government as a possible risk. And we've seen that risk come into very clear focus for a lot of different companies in a lot of different ways over the last couple of years. It does seem like, Kelly, and I think you make a really good point, that the Chinese government seems implicitly to be endorsing its own kind of corporate champions in the face of, I think, a number of challenges coming from the West, not the least of which are some of the restrictions on the exportation of technology, predominantly semiconductor technology, in terms of what a lot of people have been thinking about over the last couple of quarters from the U.S.
So let me just come back to my initial question there, which was who's driving this? Do you think that this plan originated organically and internally on the board of and among the executives of Alibaba? Was it investment bankers here or in China who said, hey, this is a great way to unlock value? Or was it Chinese government interests saying, we like smaller tech more than we like bigger tech?
That's interesting. That last point, I think, is pretty important. Honestly, I think it had to have originated and ultimately is going to be executed by the company itself. Now, that doesn't mean they didn't take input from, say, bankers or third parties or what have you. But at the end of the day, this is a company that, if you look at it closely, I mean, this is a company that was worth $850 billion at one point, I think in the fall of 2020, during the height of COVID, and more recently it was under $200 billion in value. So I think a lot of people probably were sitting around saying, what can we do to unlock value? I think this is as good a plan as any.
Interesting. Interesting. All right, Scott, thank you so much for your perspectives today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Scott Kessler.